Before we dive in, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends and family. Also, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'd love to hear from you. Okay, let's go. The borrowed voice. It's been almost a year since I lost my voice. It still feels surreal, like some cruel cosmic joke. One moment, I was laughing with friends over coffee, and the next, my throat tightened and the sound simply vanished. Doctors called it a psychogenic aphonia, a condition triggered by trauma. But the thing is, I don't remember anything traumatic happening. My name is Callum, and I used to love talking. Words were my tools, my connection to the world. Losing my voice felt like losing myself. At first, I communicated through hastily scribbled notes or gestures. Over time, I got used to texting more and speaking less. But nothing could prepare me for what happened after I lost my voice, when I began hearing it again. It started 6 months ago, on a quiet night in my small apartment. The city hummed faintly outside my window, the sounds of cars and distant conversations mixing with the creaks of my old building. I was reading a book, trying to lose myself in someone else's story, when I heard it for the first time. Callum. I froze, the book slipping from my hands. The voice was unmistakably mine, low, slightly raspy, with the same cadence I'd heard in countless recordings of myself. Callum, it repeated, softer this time, almost coaxing. I spun around, heart hammering in my chest, but the room was empty. The air felt heavier, charged with something I couldn't name. My rational mind tried to explain it away. Stress, exhaustion, maybe even an auditory hallucination. But it didn't stop. Over the next few nights, I heard it again and again. It whispered my name, repeating it like a mantra, until I thought I might scream if I could. The whispers came only at night, always when I was alone. Sometimes it called from the corner of the room, other times from the hallway just outside my door. Then, one night, it said something different. "You're not alone, Callum." I froze, clutching the edge of my blanket like a lifeline. My throat ached with the effort of trying to cry out, but no sound came. "You can't escape me," it continued, the tone almost mocking. I didn't sleep that night. I tried to tell myself it was all in my head. I avoided being alone, spending more time at work or with my best friend Lila. She was one of the few people who hadn't grown impatient with my silence, who never made me feel like I was less because I couldn't speak. One evening, Lila noticed my exhaustion. "You look like you haven't slept in days," she said, handing me a cup of tea. I nodded, avoiding her gaze. "Is it nightmares?" she asked gently. I hesitated, then pulled out my phone and typed, "Not exactly." Her brow furrowed. "What's going on, Cal?" I wanted to tell her. But how do you explain something like that? How do you tell someone you're hearing your own voice at night? That it's whispering things that make your skin crawl? I typed, "Just stress. I'll be fine." She didn't look convinced, but she didn't push. The voice grew bolder after that. It no longer waited for nightfall. I'd hear it in the shower, the soft cadence of my voice weaving through the sound of running water. It spoke to me in the quiet moments, when the world seemed still. "Do you want to know the truth?" it asked one evening, as I sat staring at the wall. I didn't respond. I couldn't. "I can help you remember," it continued. "Don't you want to know what happened that day? That day. The day I lost my voice. The truth was, I didn't want to remember. I'd buried the questions beneath layers of denial and distraction. But now, They clawed their way to the surface. What had happened to me? Why had my voice disappeared so suddenly? The voice began to change, becoming darker, crueler. "You're nothing without me," it hissed one night. "Without a voice, you're invisible, just a shadow." I covered my ears, but the sound was inside my head. "Do you want your voice back, Callum?" it asked, almost sweetly. I nodded before I could stop myself. "Then listen to me." The whispers turned into instructions. At first, they were small things, insignificant acts that didn't seem to mean much. Move the vase from the table to the counter. Lock the door exactly 3 times. But the tasks grew stranger. The voice told me to break a mirror in my bathroom, to draw symbols on my walls with charcoal. I didn't understand why, but I obeyed. I was desperate. Each time I completed a task, I felt a strange sensation in my throat, a tingling, like something trying to claw its way out. And then came the night it asked me to hurt someone. "Lila," it said, the name slicing through my mind like a knife. "She doesn't understand you. She'll leave you, just like the others." I shook my head violently, tears streaming down my face. "No?" the voice taunted. "You think she cares? You're nothing but a burden." I grabbed a pen and scrawled "Leave me alone" on the nearest scrap of paper. It laughed, a hollow, mocking sound that echoed through the room. "You're mine, Callum. You'll always be mine." I stopped listening after that. I threw out the mirrors, scrubbed the symbols from my walls, and tried to pretend the voice wasn't there. But it was. It always was. And then one night, I remembered. The memory came like a flood, crashing over me as I sat in the dark. I was driving that day, heading back from a friend's house. The rain was heavy, the road slick. I didn't see the figure until it was too late. A woman, standing in the middle of the road, her eyes wide with terror. The car swerved, spinning out of control. When I came to, she was gone. I'd screamed her name. I didn't know how I knew it, but I did. And then my voice was gone, ripped from me like a punishment. Now, as the voice whispered her name over and over, I understood. She wasn't gone. She was here. And she wasn't finished with me. The stone garden. Hiking had always been my escape. Whenever life felt too overwhelming, I'd throw on my boots, pack some essentials, and head out into the wilderness. There was something about the stillness of the forest, the earthy smell of the trees, and the crunch of leaves underfoot that made me feel at peace. That's why, when my 2 friends, Mason and Tori, suggested a weekend camping trip, I didn't hesitate to say yes. We set out early on a crisp autumn morning. The trail we picked was remote, winding through dense woods that few people seemed to venture into. Tori had found the route online, a lesser-known trail promising breathtaking views and a secluded clearing perfect for camping. The first day was uneventful. We trekked for hours, chatting and laughing as the sun filtered through the canopy above. By late afternoon, we found the clearing Tori had mentioned. It was beautiful, just as she'd promised. A large open space surrounded by towering pines. The ground was soft and covered in moss, and a small creek trickled nearby. But something about the place felt off. In the center of the clearing stood a collection of stone statues. They were scattered haphazardly, as if someone had dropped them there without any thought to arrangement. At first glance, they were stunning. Life-sized, intricately detailed figures carved from grey stone. But as we got closer, the unease set in. Each statue depicted a person frozen in a moment of sheer terror. One had its hands raised defensively, as if shielding its face from something unseen. Another clutched its chest, its mouth open in a silent scream. A third was hunched over, its hands covering its head. "Creepy," Mason muttered, circling one of the statues. "Who do you think made these?" Tori asked, her voice hushed. "No idea," I said, running my fingers over the rough surface of one. "But they're incredible. Look at the detail." Up close, the statues were even more unsettling. The expressions were so lifelike. Every wrinkle, every strand of hair perfectly etched into the stone. It felt like they could move at any moment. We decided to set up camp at the edge of the clearing, far enough from the statues that we didn't have to look at them. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, the woods were bathed in an eerie twilight. The fire crackled as we ate, trying to shake off the unease that lingered. "Did you hear that?" Tori suddenly asked, tilting her head. "Hear what?" Mason said. "Footsteps. In the woods." We all fell silent, listening. At first, there was nothing but the sound of the wind rustling the leaves. But then I heard it too. Soft, deliberate crunches, like someone walking just out of sight. "It's probably an animal," I said, trying to sound confident. "Yeah," Mason agreed, though he didn't look convinced. We tried to ignore it, but the unease only grew. By the time we crawled into our tents, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. I woke up in the middle of the night to an unnatural stillness, the kind of silence that feels wrong. Rolling over, I unzipped the tent and peeked outside. The fire had burned down to embers, casting faint shadows across the clearing. And then I saw it. One of the statues was closer to the tents. My heart skipped a beat as I scrambled out of the tent, my breath visible in the cold night air. "Mason! Tori!" I hissed, shaking their tents. They emerged groggily, rubbing their eyes. "What's wrong?" Mason asked. "The statues," I whispered. "One of them moved." He frowned, stepping into the clearing. "Are you sure? Maybe we just didn't notice it before." But I was sure. The statue now stood only a few feet from the tents, its petrified face tilted toward us. The next morning, we decided to leave. The unease had settled into outright fear, and none of us wanted to stay another night. But as we packed up, Mason called out, Guys, where's the trail?" We turned to where the path should have been, but it was gone. The trees seemed closer together, their gnarled branches twisting like grasping hands. This doesn't make sense," Tori stammered. We tried to find our way back, but the forest had changed. No matter which direction we went, we always ended up back in the clearing. And the statues were closer every time. By dusk, they were standing at the edge of the clearing, encircling us. "There's something out there," Mason said, his voice shaking. We huddled around the fire, weapons in hand. Mason with a large branch, Tori with her hunting knife, and me clutching a rock I'd found by the creek. The whispers started at midnight. Faint and disjointed, they seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Leave," one voice hissed. "Stay," said another. When we shined our flashlights into the woods, we caught glimpses of movement, shadows darting between the trees. And then the statues began to move. It started slowly, a slight tilt of a head, a shift in posture. But soon they were advancing, their stony faces locked in expressions of malice. "Run!" I yelled, grabbing Tori's hand. We sprinted into the forest, the sound of crunching leaves and snapping branches echoing behind us. No matter how far we ran, we couldn't escape. The statues were always there, waiting. By dawn, we were back in the clearing, exhausted and terrified. Mason was gone, dragged into the woods when he lagged behind. Tori and I didn't speak, too consumed by fear. As the sun rose, we noticed something horrifying. There was a new statue in the clearing. It looked exactly like Mason. We never escaped the stone garden. Even now, as I write this, I can hear them closing in. If you ever find the clearing, turn around. Don't stop. Don't look back. Because once you see the statues, they see you too. The Vanishing Motel. It was supposed to be a quick stop. Just one night to rest before hitting the road again. I had been driving for hours, the highway stretching endlessly under the beam of my headlights. Fatigue crept in, and when I saw the flickering neon sign of the Silver Pines Motel, I decided it was as good a place as any. The motel was a squat, nondescript building that looked like it had seen better days. The paint on the exterior was peeling, and the sign buzzed with a faint hum. But it was cheap, and I didn't feel like spending another minute behind the wheel. I parked my car near the office and stepped inside. The air smelled faintly of mildew and something metallic. A man stood behind the counter, his face pale and expressionless. His name tag read Harold. "Room for one?" I asked, sliding a credit card across the counter. Harold barely glanced at it. He handed me a rusty key attached to a wooden tag marked Room 8. "No smoking. Check out by 10, he said in a monotone voice. The room wasn't much better than I'd expected. A lumpy bed, a tiny television, and faded wallpaper peeling at the edges. The carpet had a damp feel underfoot, and the air was heavy with the scent of dust and something faintly rotten. Still, I was too tired to care. I double-locked the door, set my phone alarm for 7 a.m, and collapsed onto the bed. Sleep came quickly. I woke up to silence. Not the comfortable quiet of early morning, but an oppressive stillness that pressed down on me. My phone alarm hadn't gone off, and when I checked the time, the screen was blank. Dead battery, I figured. I got up and pulled back the curtains, expecting to see the parking lot and my car. Instead, there was nothing but dense forest. Panic flickered in my chest as I stared at the scene outside. The highway, the other cars, the motel sign, all of it was gone. The motel itself looked wrong. The once faded paint was now cracked and blackened as if scorched by fire. Vines crawled up the walls, and the roof sagged precariously. I threw on my shoes and bolted out the door. The lot was empty, my car nowhere to be seen. The only sound was the crunch of gravel under my feet and the distant rustle of wind through the trees. "Hello?" I called out, my voice echoing eerily in the stillness. No answer. I ran to the office, but the door was locked, and the windows were coated in grime too thick to see through. Banging on the door did nothing. Harold was gone, along with any sign of life. That's when I saw her. A woman in a tattered dress stood at the far end of the lot, her back to me. Her head tilted slightly, as if listening to something I couldn't hear. "Hey!" I shouted, relief flooding through me at the sight of another person. She didn't move. I approached cautiously, my footsteps loud in the stillness. "Are you okay? Do you know what's going on?" She turned slowly, her movements unnaturally stiff. Her face was pale and hollow, her eyes sunken and ringed with shadows. She opened her mouth as if to speak, but no words came out, only a faint, guttural moan. Then she lunged. I stumbled back, tripping over my own feet and landing hard on the gravel. The woman's hand swiped at the air where I had been a moment earlier, her fingers claw-like and trembling. "Stay back!" I shouted, scrambling to my feet. She stopped suddenly, her body jerking unnaturally. Her head tilted again, and she backed away, disappearing into the shadows of the motel. My heart pounded as I realized she wasn't the only one. Figures moved behind the cracked windows of the rooms, their faces pale and distorted. They watched me, their hollow eyes unblinking. I tried every door, hoping to find a way out. Room after room was locked, the keys on the wooden tags useless. The hallways were darker now, the air growing colder with each step. And then I heard it. A faint whispering. It came from everywhere and nowhere, a chorus of voices overlapping in a haunting melody. Words I couldn't understand, yet they filled me with an overwhelming sense of dread. I finally found an open door. Room 12. The air inside was freezing, and the room was eerily pristine, untouched by the decay that plagued the rest of the motel. On the bed sat an old suitcase, its latches broken. Inside were photographs, dozens of them. Each photo was of the motel, but from different eras. The parking lot filled with classic cars from the 50s, the neon sign freshly painted. Guests smiled at the camera, unaware of the dark fate awaiting them. In the last photo, I saw myself, standing in the lot, looking confused and scared. A knock at the door made me jump. I turned, expecting another one of the figures. Instead, it was Harold. His face was pale and emotionless, just as I remembered, but his eyes held a glimmer of something, malevolent. "You shouldn't have stayed," he said, his voice low and gravelly. "What is this place?" I demanded. He tilted his head. "A mistake, a trap. Call it what you will. No one leaves once they've stayed the night." The whispers grew louder, and I realized the figures were gathering outside the room, their faces pressed against the window. Harold stepped aside, his expression unreadable. "The choice is yours. Stay here with them, or join us." "Join you?" I asked, my voice shaking. He nodded toward the open suitcase. "They're waiting." I didn't understand what he meant until I looked closer. The photographs had changed. The smiling guests were now screaming, their faces twisted in agony. And in the last photo, my image was gone. The whispers turned into a deafening roar as the figures outside began to move, their hands clawing at the door. I made a choice. I ran. The forest swallowed me as I bolted into the trees, the motel vanishing behind me. The whispers faded, replaced by the sound of my own ragged breathing. I don't know how long I ran before I found the highway, but by the time I reached it, the sun was rising. I flagged down a passing car, the driver looking at me like I was insane. When I turned to point at the motel, it was gone. I've tried to find it again, to prove to myself it was real. But the Silver Pines Motel doesn't exist, at least not on any map. Still, I hear whispers sometimes late at night, and I know they're still out there. Thanks for joining our spooky story time. Bloody subscribe and keep the nightmares coming. Good night.